Schnookies, it is the end. We are on unit number 5, Vodcast 12. I've chosen a new design for this particular vodcast because I thought I'll let you go out beautifully. I let you ponder over all the insights that we have gathered over the last semester. And we are finishing off with the barriers in diplomatic persuasion. I would like to remind you that diplomacy has to do with keeping the peace, with setting up relationships, with making sure that there are talks between the different nation states of this world. We've also said that diplomatic persuasion can only happen if there is somewhat of a functioning relationship, and that it always aims to keep the peace, to deter the violence, to deter war, and for everybody to get along. Beyond that, these relationships also make sure that you as a nation state can actually exist sovereignly, that you're independent, and that you keep on going with your culture and the way you are doing things. However, there are 4 factors that make diplomacy sometimes tricky. What is the bane of every relationship? It is, of course, trust. If there's no trust, forget about diplomacy. Trust is earned, and some nation states in the past haven't done exactly the right thing. There was espionage, there was telling on people, there was just complete ignorance, there were declarations of war. So obviously, if you are now trying to set up a relationship between, for example, the United States and China, there might be some lingering animosity. What am I talking about? There's no lingering animosity. There's some true, evident animosity. They don't trust each other as far as they can throw each other. But it's that trust that drives agreements. It is that trust that will make the state adhere to the agreements. Diplomacy is there to bring that trust about and to remind the other state or the other states that they should please keep with these agreements. Something that we've already gone through is the role of power in international negotiations as well as in international diplomacy. There are some huge power differentials, huge gaps between the leaders and the representatives of the G8, for example, the very powerful, economically very viable countries, and those who are not part of them. Please remind yourself of some of the characteristic traits of power that we've gone through. Power is real or apparent. Power is given. Power is only as strong as it is accepted. When it comes to diplomacy, power can actually make you convince others easier to act in a certain way. Or you can also make others refrain from acting in a certain way. If you have that kind of influence, if you have that kind of convincing prowess, obviously you're on a much higher power level. Factor number 3 is the role of ideology, and I would like to once again appeal to your memory. We have just discussed what an ideology is. We said it's a group phenomenon, we said it's a secular belief, and we said that it helps us organize our world and it helps us view the world in a particular way. Of course, if we are viewing the world in different ways, there could be animosity, which is the opposite of diplomacy. And if ideologies are very different, then diplomatic persuasion might not happen. It says in the international arena, usually there is a tendency to downplay ideology for the sake of good trading to carry on. But if you look back in history, South Africa, everybody wanted to trade with South Africa, but the international arena at some stage said, if you want to carry on with apartheid, then no can do. So ideology, it does actually play a role. People were disgruntled with South Africa. We still have a similar kind of scenario with the communist ideology and a capitalist ideology in the world. I'm not saying that relationships or diplomatic persuasion cannot happen between communist and capitalist countries. It is just a little bit more tricky. Guys, we're coming to the end. It's the last factor. Propaganda in diplomatic persuasion. And of course, in a time where technology is everywhere, and Elul pointed out that propaganda is not something that society does. It is society. Propaganda, or these persuasive messages, whether it be public propaganda or party political propaganda, plays a role in how things work in the world. For example, the propaganda machines and the mass persuasion messages that are sent out by these powerful countries are much louder than those by the not so powerful countries. Depending on the type of messages that are swirling around in the public sphere, we might have a harder time with diplomacy. Just imagine somebody like Julius Malema points out a message that incites violence. Somebody looking on from the outside will not be as willing to cooperate with somebody like that. On the other hand, propaganda is just another vehicle to come into contact with one another. So it says here that international relations need propaganda so that we constantly can find out about each other. They utter a word of caution here. Even though propaganda is needed, it cannot really solve problems. However, it can keep the lines of communication open. It's been a great semester with you, Schnookies. I enjoyed guiding you through the content. I hope something actually got stored in your memory banks. I hope you had a laugh once in a while. And now it's up to you to knock it out of the ballpark and to have a really, really good mark for your COSC 6212 Persuasive Communication.